Well, that was not the intro I was expecting. What's going on, people? We bet you weren't expecting our pretty faces twice in 1 week. Chris,
What's going on, guys?
Chris, this is mostly a thing that you're doing, so I'm pretty much going to let you handle the reins for the night. But welcome back to, I don't even know what to call this, really. Like, what would you call this?
Talkin TV, man. Everything we do is Talkin TV. Welcome back to Talkin TV.
That makes sense. But like usually, like the ancillary kind of that we do is
life, music, and everything.
Wow, you just totally cross-referenced. You crossed the streams there, dude. No, I'm calling you out on that. That's funny.
There was a reason I didn't want to use that, but you made a selling point for it. See, it's tough when your inventions come back to haunt you. I feel like Nikola Tesla right now.
But also just like when everything like you cross-reference just sounds so similar. And I'm not gonna lie, I drew a lot from that statement. I was trying to think of like, movies, TV, everything in between. What could we do that sounds like that?
What's up, Ninja Zooer? Ninja Zooer's here, hanging out with us. He really got a kick out of the scrambled eggs comment from our Mandalorian.
He was the one that said that really laughed at the scrambled eggs comment. I remember vividly reading that comment. It was a lot of fun.
I'm glad you liked it as much as I did, man. Yeah. Thanks for being here yet again. We have a good show for you guys tonight. Basically, this is Talkin TV. It is a show about TV, movies, and everything in between.
There we go. We go.
Tonight we are doing something in between. You know, we're not specifically talking about like one certain thing, but we're still in that general space. And so I had a lot of fun over on our homie AJ Reacts 2's channel where we did a Lost tier ranking, and we kind of did it live. We did it off the cusp. Basically, what we have here, guys, and I'll share it with you, is just a little chart. And so there is S tier, which is like considered God tier, and then A, B, C, and D are considered themselves. So we're not like putting them in order from like first to worst per se, but I think it's going to be kind of apparent. I think we have to be pretty stern about where each episode falls into place because we can't give this show any breaks because personally, I don't think it deserves any breaks. So I'm kind of doing this maybe a little bit out of selfishness to show people like, hey guys, stop worshiping Disney 1010% like you do. Because I'd be surprised if we have more than 2 episodes up in the S tier. But really, Dom, whenever you want to like fully jump into it, essentially that's kind of the premise. So before we do that, I'm kind of hoping you're like the voice for the audience right now. And if you have any other questions, like hit me with it so we can really make the rules clear before we dive in.
Not really. You pretty much just explained everything. I think my only question is, what does the S stand for? Because I feel like if it was supposed to be God tier, it should be G. Like, does the S specifically stand for, like, the A, B, C, D, I get, because that's, like, letter grade ranking, but, like, does the S stand for something specifically, or?
S tier actually comes from, it's like, as far as I know, it's like an Asian culture thing where it's like, that's like they're above A tier. So, like, if you ever played, like, for example, I'm, like, a big Naruto fan, and so, like, in Naruto, the shows, you've read the manga. You know when they go out on like missions and they have the different graded missions? There's S tier missions, and those are the hardest missions.
Okay,
got it. It just follows that kind of format. I thought it was kind of funny, and I didn't really think it needed to be changed because, like, again, this isn't like a stern 1 through 8 in specific order. It's kind of more like, let's have fun with it and be honest where each falls. And I'm kind of curious to see how many fall within the S, the A, the B, and so on and so forth, you know?
I have a feeling that just based on how much we know about each other and how much I feel like our thoughts, weirdly enough, lined up a lot more than I thought they would with that first season. I really think that, looking back, I really think there was only one episode that we really, really disagreed with overall. But yeah, I'm not going to be, I feel like these rankings are not going to be necessarily at all surprised. For the most part, people, this was kind of just something that Chris said that we should do. And I was like, cool, I just can't really figure out when we should do it. And tonight ended up being the night we did. But before we actually get going, I just wanted to refer you guys to the fact that we also did our latest actual official Talkin TV podcast episode on the ranking of all of the Star Wars live action theatrically released movies 2 nights ago. That was a lot of fun. There was a lot more glitching than I would have been happy with, but I still think it was an awesome list, an awesome recorded list. We did 2 separate top 10 lists for each individually for us in an hour and 11 minutes. That's impressive to say the least. And I definitely think you guys should go and check that out if you get a chance. The link will be on this channel. You can see it by clicking on that Talkin TV title page. And guess what? If you click that subscribe button and the bell next to it, you can also get notified every time we put up new content. It's the amazing thing about YouTube. So Chris, you want to get into this?
Yeah, let's do it, man. So, Dom, you're usually good at, like, the recap. So if there's one thing I ask of you tonight, it's as we go through each episode, would you be cool with doing a quick recap just so everyone's sort of on the same page?
endeavor to do my best. Will you be okay with
fine.
Cliff Notes versions of the recaps? Because
Totally
I'm
fine.
basically going to be like, okay, yeah, he goes to this planet and meets these people. And that's about the extent. And I'll remember who directed each episode. That's the one thing I will be able to do. I'll be able to remember who directed each episode and wrote each episode. So I'll at least be able to do that.
That's all we really need. It's just
I can promise you that.
This is really just meant to have fun and be loose and off the cusp.
Yeah,
so
that's what I was expecting. Monday was business. Tonight is pleasure. And Friday is going to be a mix of both. See, we hit everything on this channel.
Exactly. So whenever you're ready, Dom, we are. Let's jump into this, guys. We're starting, commencing our Mandalorian tier ranking, and of course, we're starting with Chapter 1. So
yes, Chapter 1, The Mandalorian, directed by Dave Filoni, written by Jon Favreau. But I mean, are we doing like general thoughts on each episode before we rank them?
I mean, I think we can do that. Let's just hit the recap first. Just so
basic recap.
What's going on here.
Yeah, basic recap. We meet Mando. He's on an ice planet trying to track down Horatio Sands, who's a really terrible cameo. Catches him. Pretty good establishing stuff. He goes to whatever that planet is, because again, I hate that the Mandalorian doesn't tell us planet names. He meets up with Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers directs him to Werner Herzog, who says, "You must go and get the child." Go and get this property for me. I hear that the Mandalorians are I don't know how good my Werner Herzog is doing, so I'm just going to stop right there. He goes to the planet. He meets up with Nick Nolte's Ugnaught character, the MV friggin' P of that whole last season. He goes to who directs him to the compound where the property is hidden at the time, the yet-to-be-revealed child, which would become the subject of a million memes and YouTube videos. Oh, my God. Just so many things. The first meets up with the IG-11 droid voiced by Taika Waititi. He ends up meeting the child, and that's how that episode ends. Famously, I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, this was the only episode that you and I really disagreed on as far as quality goes, because I very, just as like an introduction to because the thing about this episode is that it was more than just an introduction to like kind of this new phase of Star Wars that we're in. It was showing us what Disney Plus as an app was capable of. This was like this launched the same day that Disney Plus launched. It's the reason why, like, I don't know if you remember that day last year, but like we had so many technical problems that we weren't sure if we were going to be able to.
We were nervous. I forgot about that.
Because we were recording the podcast episode the same day, and back in our season 1 days, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get the episode.
Contingency on top of contingency.
We weren't sure if we were going to be able to get the episode done in time for the recording of the podcast episode, but we did. And I still like this episode a lot. I'm not going to lie. As far as where I have it ranked within my personal rankings of these episodes, I have it ranked as my 4th overall. I really like this episode a lot. I still think it's a really good pilot.
So your 4th, does your gut tell you your 4th is an A, a B,
my
a C?
4th right now,
because we got to find a happy medium between ours. But
yeah,
since you kind of went with your
do.
thoughts first, I want to know where your gut's telling you, and then we can sort of, find.
I'm trying to think, because again, as far as there's a reason why I only have it at 4. I think that the 3 episodes that I have above it, which we will get to as we go through each episode, are a lot better than it. And I still do think that this episode is really, really good. I really, really enjoyed this episode. It's a great intro as far as just like setting up, kind of establishing the tone of the show, establishing the character. And also just like establishing overall the stakes of what the show total are going to be. That to me are the 3 things that every good pilot should do, and I think this pilot did that in spades. But you know what? Fuck it. This to me is an A tier episode. I'm putting this in the A tier. This episode, Chapter 1, The Mandalorian, is an A tier episode for me.
Is saying it's an A tier. I remember being very disappointed when this episode first came out. I thought to myself, hopefully this is just a rough start. Hopefully this isn't going to be the case. I was not a fan of it. It felt so safe and so close to the belt. But it's definitely not the worst looking back on the season, so it's tough.
Compared to what was going to come later in that season.
It's tough to say. It hasn't fully wowed me. So you say it's A tier.
I say it's A tier, yeah.
I feel that it's B tier. My question to you is, are you willing to compromise now or
I'll
later?
compromise on this episode easily, only because I think that for the most part, we're not going to have that many disagreements as far as the later episodes that I have. Like, though I will fight to the death as to these other 3 episodes being A and S tier, but I'll compromise on this one. You know?
All right, so you want to lock it in? This is
lock it in. Lock this in for B tier.
Cool.
So,
Chapter 1 down in the books, guys.
Yes.
It is only B tier.
Yes.
I respect that, Dom. You know, it's
like I said, I know when to cut my losses when I need to, but I'll fight when I have to. You saw, like I said, I'm still defending Force Awakens silently against you, and I'm still trying to mentally get into your brain and be like, it's okay, Chris, it's okay, we understand. You don't like to take predictable formula of Force Awakens, but it is still a good movie. But I have yet to actually probe your brain. So moving on, Chapter 2, The Child. the official, I guess, because Baby Yoda is really only introduced for like a microsecond at the end of the first episode. So this is technically our first introduction to this episode. So this episode is directed by Rick Famuyiwa of Dope fame, written by Jon Favreau. Chris, what are your thoughts on this episode? Because I have a weird relationship with this episode.
Yeah, so I think that because of the impact of the child and how he's become such a pop culture icon, my personal beliefs, I think, have to be put aside. Personally, I think that this episode is garbage, and I think it was just another in the long line of disappointments that the first season gave us. But honestly, man, this episode kind of changed the game and revived Star Wars in a way I never saw coming, because the movies had been tanking at this point. We all saw the Rise of Skywalker reaction in theaters, but Baby Yoda was like the saving grace around this time, so I have to give credit where credit's due. So, I mean, I'm willing to settle and give it maybe a higher grade than my gut tells me in the C or D range because of the cultural impact. But
right,
I mean, what do you think about all that?
It's kind of the same, but also not, because... Okay. It's really weird because my relationship with this episode is kind of the same as this previous episode that we just recapped this past week, Chapter 10, The Passenger, in the sense of it's a filler episode in between, I think, two very important episodes. Again, that's interesting that you give this the credit for like establishing where The Mandalorian was for you, because again, I'm coming out, it was definitely like a little bit of a like, oh, okay, so this is what the show is, in the sense of like kind of establishing it's like, you know, mission of the week interspersed with like different episodes that are like plot based. You know, that seems to be overall what the structure of the show is. We both had our individual thoughts on that, and they will be what they will be. But my whole thing with this episode is that even though I recognize what the structure was really quickly, I still think that this is one of the better Mission of the Week episodes, especially like we said, compared to some later episodes that we got in this season. And as far as the Mission of the Week episodes go, I still think this is the best one that they've done. I like the stuff with the rhino, the whatever the rhino thing was. It's weird. That was kind of my first indication. I'm like, wait, isn't that one of the creatures from Harry Potter? I liked Mando's journey in that episode, weirdly enough. And also it was, I think, the only episode where we actually saw the child be useful and not a prop. Which is
he saves Mando.
Yeah, he saves Mando at the end. So and like his relationship with Queel, with the Jawas, everything going on in that episode. Like, even though it kind of established a trend with the show that I'm still not necessarily the biggest fan of, the episode in and of itself is a good episode. So for that reason, that's why I would absolutely, as opposed to the first episode where I compromised, I still really enjoyed that episode. This episode I rank in my personal rankings at number 5, right behind the first episode. So I would put this at the B tier as well.
I would put this at the B tier too. I think you raised a lot of good points there. I think it's a really strong, as Patrick W. Huber, Professor Pat, said last Friday, it's a really strong teleplay. Yeah. Sure, it doesn't offer a lot to push the overall narrative forward, but it does just enough to keep you enticed. And I think, as opposed to what Pat was referencing in episode 2, season 2, this actually kind of gives you some background information in regards to Baby Yoda, not only using the Force and revealing that, but showing that he feels a bond towards the Mando this early on, and he feels, some could say, gratefulness or thankfulness to the Mando for sort of taking the torch on and being his overseer, protector. So yeah, I'll give it a B. I think a B is a fine tier for it.
So we're settled on that. The only thing, that last question that I have, I literally can't remember this. Was this the episode where we started to get the flashbacks to Mando's childhood, or was that not until the next episode?
Yeah, I get a little fuzzy, man. I didn't.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically. I don't remember specifically. I couldn't remember if it was. I feel like it was this episode, but it could have just as easily been this next episode that we're about to talk about. So we'll leave that for later on.
Those flashbacks.
Oh, sure.
I didn't even remember they happened until you just said them.
Oh, I remember that.
Insignificant they felt to me.
That's where I got to disagree with you. I think those are probably the thing that I most vividly remember, because like I think that it's necessary also, besides just good character backstory for him, which is a character that, again, the whole point of that character is that he's supposed to be a mystery, but also is the idea of, once again, tying everything together as far as, oh, okay, we're getting like some backstory to the Clone Wars. And this is kind of continuing in like kind of some of the more recent Dave Filoni projects of like kind of tying all 3 eras of Star Wars that we've experienced now in our lifetimes together. And I think the flashbacks actually serve a really good purpose for that. It's just overall with the show, with the first season finding its pace, it's really weird because some people like the Mission of the Week interspersed with the mythology episodes. I still am yet to be convinced. Again, I'll wait until the end of this season, I feel like, to give it the benefit of the doubt, but I still am yet to be convinced that it's going to work in the show's benefit in the long run. But the good thing is that was not the case at all with this next episode, with Chapter 3, The Sin, which was the brand new director. Unlike Rick Famuyiwa, again, famously, season 1 only had 4 directors. Filoni directed 2. Rick Famuyiwa directed 2. 5 directors. 5 directors. Rick Famuyiwa directed 2. Bryce Dallas Howard made her directorial debut this episode. Taika Waititi obviously famously directed the finale. But this person, Deborah Chow, who directed this episode, that being Chapter 3, The Sin, I think between this and the penultimate episode, which she also directed, I think made her mark on the Star Wars saga as being like, whoa, where is this person? What has she been doing this whole time? How the hell did they find her? And can I just see like everything from her now? And when she was announced as the showrunner for the Obi-Wan show, I was like, cool, because in my opinion, she directed the 2 best episodes of this first season. Because Chapter 3, The Sin, I remember this was the first episode where we were both actively in agreement. I'm like, yeah, this episode is fucking awesome. Like Mando brings the child back to the client, the Werner Herzog character, and it automatically, like, just with the little head cock with how the stormtroopers are treating it, he's already full of doubt as to what they're going to do with the child, and he eventually goes back and rescues it. But also, this is the last episode, unfortunately, where we actually get to see that little underground sect of Mandalorians in action before they're tragically wiped out off screen. And they were probably the best part about the show, seeing them all getting together, him bringing those individual pieces that he got to the armor in order to add to his armor. There was so much that was said without anything actually being said, except for the John Favreau voiced stormtrooper who gave exposition. But let me tell you something, dude. That last action sequence was one of the best that I saw from this entire show. And I'm like, oh shit,
that's
cool.
When he's like sort of fighting his way out of the Werner Herzog that was awesome, man.
Yeah, well, and all this
so
and all the other
badass.
Mandalorians come back to back him up. And I'm like, oh shit. So that's what the show is capable of.
Yeah, true. I mean, it was super small scale, but it was just done so well that just the moment felt so intense. You really were there for like, man, is he going to pull out? I mean, I'm sure he is. There's 5 more episodes, but like it's a little hairy right now.
Yeah.
And you didn't really get the feeling that it could get to that level from the first 2 episodes. Plus, I mean, this was like for the overall story of the first season, huge in regards to progressing the plot. It was really the first taste of, okay, this could go somewhere more than just like our Walker, Texas Ranger style start and stop and restart again next week storytelling, which obviously I'm not the biggest fan of. You guys know that by now. And so this episode kind of gave me hope. And yeah, I think Deborah Chow did a phenomenal job. And I am stoked that she's going to be in good hands as the Obi-Wan show is in.
Yeah, to say the least. Again, she, in my opinion, with the exception of the finale, she directed the 2 best episodes of this season. I think there's a very specific reason for that. Not to mention the fact that just as far as Mando backstory goes, I believe, again, it really pisses me off that I should have watched the first season over and again because I cannot remember for the life of me which flashbacks happened. But I think this is the episode where you saw the flashback of him being hidden by his parents during the Separatist attack in his flashbacks, and then him being rescued by the Mandalorians. I think that was this episode too, which would make sense. And it was just the way that it ended, the way that it was shot, action-wise, you could tell where everything was happening. It was so awesome. Finally seeing the Mandalorians back in action. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm torn between this being an A and an S tier episode. I think if not for the final 2 episodes, this would be S tier, only because of like just how we're about to get into the next 3 episodes after this.
Spoilers for the future of this video right now. I was going to say that I can hear your argument out for an S tier, and if you really were going to push me on it,
this is an A tier, though. I have to come to my senses here. I got to put bias aside. This is an A tier episode without a shadow of a doubt.
110%.
Yeah. And now we got to get into the muck. Oh, these next 3 are going to be fun. So, Chris, I don't remember where we said. I think it's safe to say that it was pretty unanimous between pretty much everyone, not just you and me, but everyone, that episodes 4 and 5 were nobody's favorite episodes, specifically their least favorite episodes. But I think it went back and forth. This, for me personally, was my least favorite episode. That would be Chapter 4, Sanctuary, the directorial debut of Bryce Dallas Howard. Also, I believe, written by Jon Favreau. Yeah, the last of the of the first batch of episodes that was directed by Jon Favreau. Like I said, Jon Favreau wrote 6 episodes out of this first season. That is not the case this season, but for this previous season, Jon Favreau wrote 6 episodes. This is my least favorite episode. The setup is so beyond generic. This was like where the mission of the week also started to adapt other story modes that, sure, I guess if well written, I just don't think played out well. We've seen it time and time again. Not to mention, this was where they started to bring in the extras for the celebrity cameos, and they just did not work at all. Like, no. It was definitely where the cutesy really started to overtake. Where Mando, in the first of his next 3 kind of mission of the week side
weeks,
like
the other bounty hunter woman, right?
Yeah, this is the first episode where he meets Cara Dune, portrayed by Gina Carano. He lands on that backwater planet, and they're being attacked by an Imperial TIE fighter, sorry, an AT-ST walker, and he has to protect the village and arm them. You've seen it a million times before. It's Magnificent Seven. I'm pretty sure Filoni already used that story structure like 3 different times in the Clone Wars alone. I'm pretty sure he also used it for Rebels.
I didn't mind this episode, though. I actually thought for how generic it was and how we all knew that there was no way he could end up with that woman because, let's be honest, he's a Mandalorian. I mean, he's not going to end up with her. He's not going to take his mask off. It actually felt like if this was where they ended it, it wouldn't be terrible because Baby Yoda would have fit in really well there. That aesthetic, the set design really worked for me. The whole fallen AT-ST and that little battle sequence felt pretty grandiose for like what, a cast of 50 in like this
something like that.
Very
very small cast. Yeah.
And it kind of gave me that Star Wars magic and charm that I had really been looking for. Sure, Episode 3 was awesome, but I think it was more so the screenplay was awesome, and what we had gotten out of the character was great, but it felt more like a Western, whereas this episode felt like going to an unseen planet and really getting down in the muck and the mire and sort of seeing like, okay, how do the people live that like are sort of on the Outer Rim? We always hear about the Outer Rim, but how do they actually live out here? And it was kind of cool. Like it to me, it didn't push the narrative along any further. So I'm not saying it's an A or an S. I also don't think it's a C or a D. To me, it feels like a B because it gives me that little bit of Star Wars tinge that I've wanted. That little.
All right.
I always sit there wondering, like, what is it like on a planet that isn't just one of the 3 biomes? And we got that in this episode.
All right. I caved to you for 1 and 3. I'm gonna fight for my position here. Again, this episode gives me a little bit as far as like the Cara Dune character, even though Gina Carano still can't act. I still think that character was an interesting character. Again, kind of introducing some of the moral gray that you really enjoyed about the Rebel pilots from this past episode, just as far as her history as a shock trooper, specifically from Alderaan. That alone was enough for me where I'm like, whoa, okay, so she's got that baggage of, seeing her planet blown up and she's probably become a little bit disillusioned. And as far as the actual battle itself, that was cool. Every time, like, Filoni knows this stuff. Like I said, he's already done this type of story 3 different times in Clone Wars. He knows exactly what to do here and how to make it really cool. And Bryce Dallas Howard, I guess, sure, she did a good job. I don't necessarily. She's a relatively new director, so I don't actually know how much oversight she had with the action scenes. But as far as the actual direction goes, you mentioned the woman that is like hitting on Mando. I wish that they got a better actor for that part. I think she was another newcomer, but I don't know. I mean, I'll fully delve into hot take here, but she is on the level to me of Jake Cannavale in the next episode as far as being possibly the worst actor on the entire show. She was not good. So unfortunately, I'll be generous because, again, I still, even though this is my personal least favorite episode, I still will give this episode props where credit is due. So for me, this is a C tier episode though, for me, easily.
Yeah, I can go with C. You make a strong case for a D. Listen, here's why I think it's
this is not a D episode, but I'm just saying, me personally, this is my least favorite episode. But trust me, I will see I will concede all the points when it comes to the next episode. But
yeah, well, listen, it's a C for me because I think while it doesn't, like I said, push anything forward, it wasn't terrible. It was a super safe script, but it was executed the way that you expect this kind of story to be executed. You can't take any points away. You also can't give that many points. But to me personally, like I said, it did offer and fill sort of that what is this like in this part of the galaxy sort of taste that I was hoping the small screen sort of a star traveler would give us. And haven't gotten much of that since. But jumping forward into
now we get into
old episode 5.
Oh god, episode 5. Probably it's safe to say, again, weirdly enough, somehow I don't hate this episode as much as everyone else does, but this is a bad episode. This is just one of those episodes where I'm like, I look at Filoni and Favreau, I'm like, what the fuck were you guys thinking with this episode? Like,
this is guy on the left.
Jake Cannavale, son of the famous actor Bobby Cannavale, who is an incredible actor. This is the worst case of, I'm making an argument right here. This is the worst case of nepotism I've ever seen. And J.J. Abrams' son, who is barely into college, is already writing a Spider-Man comic. Keep that in mind. But
that's not nepotism.
Yeah, if that doesn't tell you something just about JJ, just in general. Chapter 5, The Gunslinger, directed by Dave Filoni, and written by Dave Filoni. Unfortunately, that kind of makes this even more insulting with how bad this episode is. The fact that Filoni, not only this was the second episode that he directed the season, but also wrote. This is the first episode that he wrote for the season, which is, oh my God, that's bad. That's really, really bad.
It's surprising, especially with how much we've been saying in Filoni.
Yeah, we're singing his praises. Yeah, it's like, first of all, he goes to Tatooine in order to accept a bounty okay. And he goes and he teams up with again. Pull up a picture of that fucking loser again. I don't even remember what I don't even remember what his name. I have his name written down. It's what is it? Hold on. Toro Calican, whatever. They're going to hunt down this bounty hunter named Fennec Shand, portrayed by Ming-Na Wen from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Mulan fame. She's not in it nearly enough. The mission itself is stupid. The setup is stupid. Like they got to bring her in. But then,
fight, dude, there's no intensity in that fight. It's like they're thousands of miles away, and they don't do a good job at all of zooming in or showing you any character moments. It's like, we're getting sniped at from thousands of meters away. Sure, this is terrible. I would hate to be in that position in real life, but it's like, I don't feel a sense of urgency at all right now.
You know what this felt like? This felt like Filoni was gonna do the setup. This whole episode felt like it was gonna be the setup for Boba Fett, the way that the first episode this season, Chapter 9, the Marshal was. But then at the last second, I don't know if it was like an Disney example or if it was Favreau stepped in, because from what it sounded like Filoni definitely made it sound like Favreau was pulling like a lot of the strings as far as that goes. And Favreau was like, nah, we got to say Boba Fett. And to me, that kind of probably ruined this episode, because again, the whole thing is that like Jake Cannavale, weirdly enough, even though he's the worst character on the show, easily decides to kill Ming-Na Wen. But then at the end of the episode, you see some figure, just their legs coming up to her. And again, I think everyone was like, oh, that was the first like inklings of the rumors of like, oh, is this going to be Boba Fett? And we didn't actually get to see him until this episode. Yeah.
All the Easter egg channels like pausing and zooming in and being like, look at the kink in the leg armor. That's like this, that, and the other thing, or whatever it was exactly. Everyone trying to get their clickbait, fabricating that.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and also
we crave this nostalgia bubble so much, but because we that's a different show. But it's just
that's a whole different podcast that potentially we can hit next season. No, trust me, I get it, dude. I'm right there with you. Again, I liked it better than episode 4 only because episode 4 infuriated me more. And with this episode, I heard the criticisms before I got a chance to watch the episode, and every time I do that, that automatically like makes me like more, I guess, repellent and more like accepting of it. But I'll fully admit, this is easily the worst episode of season 1, no question. This is D tier. One other thing I forgot, it also introduced my other least favorite character, who we're getting more of now this season. Amy Sedaris is Pelimoto, who the minute she opens her mouth, I'm like, you are not a Star Wars character, and why do you sound familiar? And then I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, that's right, because you're Princess Carolyn from BoJack Horseman. And
this revolving cast thing has some.
It has its perks, but
it also has some very scary consequences we may have to pay or suffer.
Yeah. Fingers crossed that this past episode was the last we see of her for a while. But yeah, put it in that fucking D slot. Put it in the D slot. Yeah. No question there.
Fuck
Chapter 5, the Gunslinger. That was that was awful. So now this next episode that we're getting to, we're knocking these down pretty quickly. This next episode that we're gonna get to is a little bit of an interesting one, because actually I said before that Chapter 1, The Mandalorian, was our most divisive episode, just as far as you and I go. I might actually be wrong, because the more I've thought about it, the next episode is most famously known as the Bill Burr episode. Even though it's not the official name of it, it will forever be known as the Bill Burr episode. Weirdly enough, I mean, this was an episode where I didn't hate as much as everyone else did the first time I saw it. Yeah, sure, go.
Oh, sorry, no, because I don't want to, before we get too far away from it, so just so you guys know, and you guys can go check this out, it's on the channel. Dom and I covered the first season, and I was super against this episode. And even this week, or these past few weeks, I've just been totally against this episode, and I still stand by that, because I think at this point, not only was I so defeated by the previous episode, and like I said, Chapter 4 wasn't terrible, but it was just another schlockfest of all the schlockfests we had gotten up to this point. I really was just like wanting the show to be over, and I was thinking, okay, look, I'm gonna give the last 3 a chance, because I started to see what he had done with Clone Wars at that point in time. Dom had got me to start watching it, and I was
still gotta get back on that, by the way.
Yeah, dude, there's so much to watch, but I'm definitely trust me, this winter break, I'm gonna hit it hard if I can, and it just, with the names attached, with the setting, which I thought was really cool, and with kind of like the intensity that they set up in the beginning, it just let me down so badly. But, Dom, make your case for it, man, because I know we're going to have some debate on this one.
So this episode, famously known as the Bill Burr episode, is actually entitled Chapter 6, The Prisoner. This is the second episode directed by Rick Famuyiwa, and this episode is interesting because this episode is actually the only episode in which Favreau and Filoni did not write. This is actually credited. There are 2 credited writers here. The story is by Christopher Yost, and the teleplay is by Christopher Yost and Rick Famuyiwa. where do I go with this episode? This episode is easily the most celebrity filled because in this episode alone, you get Sons of Anarchy's Mark Boone Jr., famously Bill Burr, Natalia Tena from Harry Potter and Game of Thrones fan, Clancy Brown, who this was not the first time, who had voiceover parts in both Star Wars Rebels and Star Wars The Clone Wars. He voiced Darth Maul's brother, Savage Opress, in The Clone Wars, and he also played the mayor of Ezra's town on Lothal, whose name I'm currently forgetting. In Star Wars Rebels, big voice actor, been in a million things, voiced Mr. Krabs on SpongeBob SquarePants famously. That's probably his most iconic role. Oh yeah, he's been in a million things.
That's awesome.
Been in a million things. But he was the big horn dude. And famously from the IT Crowd, Richard Ayoade as the voice of that droid, Q90.
Did you watch IT Crowd, by the way?
I did not, but I've heard a lot of great things about it. But it's safe to say this episode is chock full of celebrity cameos. And it definitely overcompensates from the more than basic plot. But weirdly enough, I don't know if it's just the fact that because I'm a big fan of snatch and grab heist movies, but I think the only, to me, really distracting part of this episode were Mark Boone Jr. and Bill Burr, because I think those were the only two instances where the celebrity was really distracting. Like Amy Sedaris in the previous episode was one thing because that was just a bad casting choice, and like she was definitely trying to like embody a Star Wars character and everything. But like Mark Boone Jr. and Bill Burr, like they are just so established in like kind of their personas. With Mark Boone Jr. always gonna get like the super gruff, super manly guy with the drawl and the voiceover and everything, and he's super husky and everything because that's what he did for 7 seasons of Sons of Anarchy. And Bill Burr is Bill Burr. I think the most amount of like I think actually like really interesting acting we're gonna see from him are two things. One, well, obviously all of his appearances in the Chappelle Show, but one, his appearance as one of Saul Goodman's henchmen in Breaking Bad. And two, that being his, to me, should be Oscar caliber performance in King of Staten Island. But I think if both those two performances are variations on his own personality, this one, he's famously made fun of Star Wars. It's very clear this was a paycheck for him. And just the fact is like, yeah, he was in Star Wars. People even called him out on the fact is like, dude, you make fun of Star Wars relentlessly. And he's like, yeah, because I want a fucking paycheck, you know? But there's a reason why this will always
because I you know, the whole celebrity thing, that's not the reason why this episode falls short for me. I actually really enjoyed Mark Boone Jr. and Bill Burr, and you know, I can separate the comedian from the serious role. Like, I loved King of Staten Island. If you guys want to see me not even take into consideration that he's a comedian first, he was just an actor in that movie, go check out our review for it, because that's not the issue here for me. The issue is just like none of the cast clicked for me. They just felt so forced together. It was like, oh, now we need this archetype and this archetype, and we have to, you know, grab this, and someone has to get cut off, and we can't just quickly get in and out, because that's not how any of these things go, which is fine, because that's what people want to see with like a snatch and grab. But where was your twist? What did you offer differently into it? To me, the Star Wars setting isn't enough, and that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, it's weird. Again, I'm just going to chalk this up to personal bias, but I just had fun watching this episode. Like, I agree, none of the cast members clicked, and they all felt like, oh, he's the strong, gruff type, and she's the weird, like, kind of mysterious, like, sexy type, and he's the gruff type, and he's the... Well, Bill Burr, I don't even know if there was a type. That's just like, yeah, just Bill Burr. He's just playing Bill Burr. There was a slight funny moment when he made fun of the Gungans. That was cool. Also shout out to also shout out to the one rebel guard that they found on that ship, portrayed by Matt Lanter, who is the voice of Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars series. Oh,
that's cool.
Yeah, that was a cool. I didn't recognize him at first. I'm like, that guy looks familiar. And I looked up. I'm like, yeah, that's Matt Lanter. That makes sense. Again, it's a fun episode. To me, again, I won't dare put this in the B tier, not at all. But I don't think it's a D at all. I would put this in the C tier overall.
I would put this, honestly, I was going to say, if you made a big case for the B tier, I was going to let it sit there because I can see your arguments.
Again, because I admit that, like, yeah, I had fun with this episode, but this is certainly not at all to the caliber, like, even to the B tier. I would absolutely put chapters 1 and 2 over this. So, yeah, this is a C tier episode for me. It's a lot of fun, and I had fun with it, and kind of seeing the celebrities. I'm like, oh, I know that guy, I know that guy, and I know that guy. And that voice kind of sounds familiar. But if that's the best this episode has going for it, that's not good. Oh, and literally down to the final 3 pilots when you saw the 3 directors at that point, Dave Filoni, Rick Famuyiwa, and Deborah Chow show up as the 3 pilots when they blew up the Mark Boone Jr. station at the end. Cool. That was fun. It was a fun bit. Yeah. And but that again, that's all this episode has going for it. But now, Chris, we're here. We're finally here. The moment that we were literally waiting for all season, because I think it's safe to say that after this point, even I was starting to feel a little bit defeated. Where I was like, you were easily defeated after episode 5. I was starting to get there. I'm like, okay. Is this what the show is going to be for the rest of it? But clearly, like, they understood exactly what they were doing, because oh man,
You hung in
did
there,
they
man.
pick
Why?
back up?
Why
I
did
hung
you hang in there so long?
because we only had 2 episodes left, and I'm like, okay, if they don't pull out all the stops for these last 2, like that, forget like just Star Wars and this show in general, like just from a common sense standpoint, it's like, come on. But yeah, Chapter 7, The Reckoning, directed by Deborah Chow, written by Jon Favreau. This episode fucking rocked. This episode was everything that I love from these types of movies. It was the getting the gang together movie. It was the infiltration movie. It was there were the betrayals involved. There was probably the most tragic death, the most tragic death of the entire show, with a beloved character that you brought everyone back. I'm like, it was kind of reminding me, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is a show. This is not just like a mission of the week type of thing. So there is going to be some continuity here. You know, they go back. Carl Weathers calls him back. He's like, Mando, I need your help. Oh, real quick, because I just wanted to go into side tangent. What were your thoughts on Carl Weathers in this show as Grief Karga?
Great. I love Carl Weathers, man. He can do no wrong for me. I thought that he not only he did. So okay, so it's great that you said this now, because we just talked about the celebrity crammed episode for the sake, I think, of celebrity. Did not feel that about him at all. I felt he really clicked with the role. I thought that him as sort of the older, slower, not in the field anymore, but sort of organizing the crime and sort of dictating the missions, I thought he really worked in that role, and I liked him a lot. I thought he added just the right amount of fun to this intense penultimate and finale episode. So.
Yeah. I like Carl Weathers in the show. He was a lot of fun to watch. I don't necessarily know if he was the best acting wise. I think he was doing his best to be like the showman and definitely doing what the role called for. But I definitely think it was a sense of like, oh, he's famous and an older actor. And this show was marketing itself when it was first announced. It's like, look at all these older, weirder actors that we have. I think Werner Herzog, I mean, you could stick him in anything and he just works. I'm like, I could literally just listen to that man read the dictionary and I would be fascinated by it, because he's got one of the most interesting voices, one of the funniest Parks and Rec cameos of all time, easily. He's the guy that sold April and Andy the creepy house at the beginning of season 7. And
okay.
Yeah. And also, this is the episode where we got the introduction of Giancarlo Esposito's Moff Gideon. So first off, after Mando gets the call from Carl Weathers, he immediately senses it's a trap. So he goes to the water planet, picks up Cara Dune, goes to Queel's planet, picks up Queel, some of his things. Also, it's revealed that Queel repaired IG-11, so we get Taika Waititi back. That is set up for later on. Goes to the planet to meet up with Grief Karga. He reveals that he was planning to betray them, but for whatever reason decided to back out because I think they got attacked, and like the child. That's right. So this is the other instance where the child actually used its Force abilities in order to heal Grief. Which would later be used in The Rise of Skywalker, unfortunately. They go to meet the client. The client is unceremoniously gunned down the minute that he contacts this guy, and it's revealed that this guy is the true big bad, Moff Gideon. And it was the first instance, I think, of where it showed that Giancarlo Esposito, you get him because he's solid and dependable, but Giancarlo Esposito is just like playing Gus Fring for the rest of his life. And that's fine. Again, he's finally in a position where he can make a lot of money. He gets hired because you know exactly what you're going to get from him when you hire him. Again, he does the same performance across 4 different very, very popular mediums, between Moff Gideon for this, the voice of Lex Luthor for the Harley Quinn animated show, Stan Edgar on The Boys, and also reprising, ironically, the role that made him famous, Gus Fring on Better Call Saul, which is seeing a resurgence.
There's no difference between, I've seen 3 out of the 4 of those guys, and I really feel like there's no difference between all of them. Except the only thing is that at least the 2 out of the 2 out of the ones that aren't Gus Fring, because it's math is a lot, and I'm tired right now. Out of the ones that I've seen, they're all fake, lesser versions of Gus Fring. And I was gonna say, I thought I was gonna have to like sort of argue you down on him, because I thought maybe you kind of like bought the gimmick here.
Nah,
but
he's good. Yeah. He's good. He's solid, dependable. He's a compelling bad guy. And just talk about making an entrance. Goddamn. And again, this episode was awesome, just as far as like being this really tense and interesting setup to the finale of this episode specifically and the next episode. And also it ended in, again, the saddest death in the entire show, with the death of Queel, unfortunately, who was racing back to the ship with the child. They try to pull the double cross on the client by bringing in just the child's pod without the actual child. The child is staying back outside of town with Queel. They get trapped by Moff Gideon. He radios to Queel to get back to the ship, but he's being chased by stormtroopers, and you think he's made it, but last second it shows the smoking husk, and I'm like, oh, there's just a small piece of you that dies. Rest in peace, Quill. Nick Nolte's best performance in years, easily. The fact that he gives so much charisma, so much heart to that little Ugnaught, which is, again, I thought that there was like going to be some CG involved. No, I'm pretty sure it was entirely puppetry. That was only voiceover involved. And props to him and props to the puppetry department. I don't know about you, Chris. Yeah. This is an S tier episode for me. Absolutely.
Okay, so I think that because of how much better the finale was than this episode,
Right.
And because there's just such a quality difference, not saying they're both not great, I just think that this episode still had moments where it lagged, and you know, when they're sitting around that campfire and they're getting the gang together, and then how quickly, you know, it just becomes down to just the three of them, and it's just like there was just some things in there that just felt forced because we have these actors on payroll and we got to use them. It just felt like some of it wasn't what I had hoped, and that could just be a me thing, and you know, so it depends on how badly you want to fight me on this. If we're going to be looking at, let's be honest, 2 S tiers in a row.
Yeah,
for me, it seems like we're looking at an A and an S, and we won't quite spoil it yet, but I mean, let's just be honest, you know?
It's
so what do you think
pretty obvious. The only counter that I will offer to that, which I see all your points, the only counter that I will offer to that, Queel's death to me is, I think that we like to give a lot of credit to the finale because it's the one where the most amount happens. It's the one where the most amount of action happens. I don't think, obviously, that action to me does not resonate as much if you don't have this episode setting everything up. Obviously, with the introduction of Moff Gideon, the death of Queel, the reintroduction of IG-11, and how that all factors into everything that happens in this episode. But I think just from a writing standpoint, it's rock solid. I think there's a lot of emotional moments. I think this is also where you start to begin to get some more flashbacks into Mando and also some of his origin. And yeah, it's really, really interesting and tense at points. I think that this episode, to be without this episode, the finale is not as, it's still an awesome episode, the finale, but it's not as impactful as it is. That's why I argue this is an S tier. Like I look at this and I look at chapter 3. To me, if you put this in A tier, if you put like, actually no, wait, yeah, this is an S tier episode to me.
Okay, you make a good case, man. I can see what you mean, even though I think that some of it doesn't deserve kind of, I don't know, the forgiveness you're giving it. It's marginal it's
tricky.
Personal battle lines, and you've compromised in the past on this, so I'm going to give it to you, man. I'm going to go with an S tier. It would have been an A if it was just up to me, but that's fine because, hey, look, this is our combined list, and like we said at the top, compromises will be made.
Yes, indeed, especially for potentially some future lists down the line. But let's get to it. The Mac Daddy, the grand finale of it all. It was all built into this, and thank God it was because, oh man, I don't think we would because we don't have anything else to watch because COVID and because it's Star Wars and we're basically slaves to Disney. But we would not be watching season 2 without this finale. Chapter 8, Redemption. Holy mother effing shit. From the opening scene with those two with that slapstick comedy farce scene with those two dumb stormtroopers voiced by Jason Sudeikis and Adam Pally trying to shoot at that one little rock.
That was Jason Sudeikis?
That was Jason Sudeikis. I was trying to listen.
Wow.
I was trying to listen. I'm like, those voices sound so familiar. Yeah. And I'm like, I do that with every single episode and every single time it's somebody who I recognize, and it was Jason Sudeikis.
The season 1.
Yeah.
Surprising.
And it was so fun. It was so funny. And then the droid shows up. And I'm like, okay. And after that scene, I'm like, okay, this droid is going to rule this entire fucking episode. And it was totally right. I wondered, I'm like, because the first episode, I'm like, wait, they're not going to bring in Taika. Because I recognize, I'm like, I knew Taika was voicing the droid. That wasn't much they told us in the trailer. And then when Mando shot him at the end of that first episode, I'm like, wait a minute, they're not going to bring in Taika and only use him for one episode. Not after this guy just directed Thor Ragnarok and is like on top of the world. There's no way they're going to use him for just one episode. And then when they brought him in for episode 7, I'm like, okay, that's cool. But like, he didn't really do much, and it's cool that he's like on their side now and everything. And that's another reason why I wanted to put episode 7 in S tier, because there was a lot of subliminal stuff to me that happened between Mando and IG-11 in that episode also. Like, I like their little bond that they formed in the first episode, and I honestly would have watched a show that was just the two of them going around the galaxy wrecking shop.
Can I be honest? I kind of forgot a little bit about all that because I think a lot of the season is forgettable, which is unfortunately their fault. Yeah. But I think you're right. The Mando and IG-11, their chemistry was great, and I gotta say, you know, he kind of steals the show in this finale.
He does. I mean, rightfully so. Because well, Taika, in addition to starring and voicing IG-11, also directs this episode, the last episode written by Jon Favreau in this season, and yeah, he knocks it out of the park completely. I've made this joke multiple times throughout the course of our podcast, but I totally 100% believe it. It's like they went to him to direct this because he was super hot, and they were sitting down in the scripting phase, whatever. And at some point, he's like, "Yeah, I want my character to be the hero of this episode," and he was, and it totally worked because the first half of this episode is very, very expository. Moff Gideon knows obviously who Mando is from a previous life because he was the one who actually led the attack on his village, and it's a little bit expository and a little bit set up. But the minute that IG-11 rides into town, oh man, it is on. Like, I know that you've been very critical of Ludwig Göransson's score for this entire show, and rightfully so. I think it's kind of really boring and really generic, but the score...
Can I actually amend that right now?
Yeah, well, no, because what I was going to say is that for this episode, he almost redeems himself because, God damn, that score when he rides into town, jumps off the bike, it blows up, he's in the center, mowing down Trooper left and right. He like switches his body around so he can protect the kid. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Like
So, you've seen Seinfeld, right?
Yes, I have.
Season 2, episode 3 of The Jacket?
Yes.
So George has that Les Miserables song stuck in his head, right?
Yeah.
And he thinks he's going insane because it's stuck in his head, right? Yep. That's been me the past 2 to 3 weeks with this Mandalorian score. I just hear burn, dun, dun, and I don't want to sing anymore, but like it's stuck in my head, and I'm trying to wonder if it's because it's actually good. I now know it's catchy.
It's catchy.
I'm coming
it's
around
catchy
to it,
and it's repetitive. It's that.
I
it's
think
that
I
TV.
just hate hip hop hi-hats and hip-hop effects in Star Wars. It irks me the same way that the score for Lovecraft Country did.
Yeah.
But I'm coming around to it. I hate to say it. And the score is badass in this finale,
Yeah,
let's be honest.
It's so good. This episode is rocking all high tiers for everything that the show kind of was having problems and struggles with finding its footing throughout this season. This episode, to me, solved every problem. I'm like, yes, this is what this show is. Like, it's just a badass, no holds barred, like gunfight at the OK Corral, like good old fashioned Western.
This episode I actually went back and rewatched before we hit this new recap.
I might have to rewatch this episode after this. Like that's how excited I'm getting.
It's a good one, man. I rewatched the pilot and I rewatched the finale, and I figured that would help me fill in the gaps and what happened in between. And it did its job. I don't feel like I'm missing out when I'm sort of critiquing it week to week on our Mando Watch show, but this set the bar so high that I really... This is why I think I'm even more frustrated than I kind of thought I might have been with the first 2 episodes of Season 2 that we've gotten, because it's such a dynamite episode.
Yeah.
I mean, it's explosive, quite literally, and in just the way that the script is just so airtight, and all the character moments feel right. Mando, I mean, with the whole, will he take it off, will he not take it off in regards to the mask, I actually felt that. I was like, oh, is he going to break his code here, or is he going to die? Like, you didn't really know what was going to happen.
And just like the way that they handled that was just insanely good, where it's like, you can't take a mask. Like, I'm not a living being. So like that's just furthered their bond. And then when he T2s himself as they're coming out of the lava tunnel, I'm like, fuck. I'm like, no offense, but fuck that fucking product placement kid, especially this season. I'm like, great, I gotta watch a show about those two. Now I wanted a show about Mando and IG-11. Give me that, because let me tell you something. In one episode, Mando and IG-11's relationship, just as far as how much he hates droids, already made for like a better setup than Mando's relationship with the child. And I'm not gonna lie, if the relationship with the child only gets worse as time goes on, that's gonna make me even more pissed that they didn't go this route. Because no joke, like, I kind of wanted to travel back in time and be like, okay, John, Dave, give me fucking Mando and IG-11, because that show, oh man, if that proved that we were gonna get every episode like this finale, and then every episode could be like that, I would have been like, sold, done. This episode's perfect.
You have a time machine. You can only travel back to one place and one point in time.
I'm going back there. I'm going back there. This is the one thing that I'm doing. No, because the reason why I don't do Disney and Lucasfilm being sold is because that was kind of inevitable, and Lucas kind of just wanted to be done with it. And I don't think there was like kind of anything that I could do to really change his mind. Plus, he's also involved in it in some capacity. Plus, without that acquisition, we don't really get Disney Plus, and I still think there is potential for Disney Plus to do some really interesting content down the road. As far as that goes, I would change this, because I think that this kind of solves all of our problems, not only with this show, but just with our perception of Star Wars right now in general. So that's why I'm going that. But even with that like micro critique, this episode is so fucking awesome, and it really sucks because kind of once the droid dies, the fun kind of goes out of this episode, because as cool as it is seeing the armor again, as cool as it is seeing her like give Mando his new mission that, okay, you now have to protect the child and bring it back to its kind. And it was kind of a little bit like defeating as far as like, oh, that's what he's going to do now for the rest of the show. Great. And again, it's I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to pass judgment on a show that's not complete yet, but it does definitely leave me worried for the future of this show, as far as just like it's going to get a lot more cutesy probably going on. But we get the cool fight with the TIE fighter, and then we get the cool tease with Moff Gideon with the Darksaber at the end, which again, I'm even more and more worried that was just going to be a tease. Because there is a lot of fan service and a lot of nostalgia in the show, like there is with every Star Wars property now. Yeah. And Yeah, but as far as that goes, though, with everything else that this episode does, this episode is awesome. It was a great finale. It was an absolute fantastic just way to end the show, kind of get us suckered back in and interested in season 2. Slot it right there in that S tier slot. I already know that you're thinking of it. We both know this is the best episode of the show. This is the best episode of that season. And that's it. We did it.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's the only reason, if, like I always say, if we weren't covering this show on our channel, this would be the reason that I would have stuck around and continue to watch, because it was such a strong penultimate and finale combination back to back. It's kind of everything I wanted from this type of show. Unfortunately, it seems like we're following a similar roadmap on season 2 than we were on season 1. But I'm hoping that they, if this is what we get again, a carbon copy in regards to the structure and the way that they, roll out plot points and develop the characters, they at least have to outdo episodes 7 and 8. If they don't, then good luck. Yeah. Good luck in the future.
It's so tricky just as far as future shows longevity goes, because obviously TV rewatching, to me, I feel like has become something that's even more apparent with COVID than it was before. I personally can tell you that with the exception of Game of Thrones, because just of how my relationship with that show went, and certain animated shows that like run for like very short periods of time, so it's very easy for me to rewatch. Before the year of 2020, I was not a TV rewatcher. I was like one and done, and that's it. So, but obviously with this year with 2020 and COVID, that has changed dramatically. I'm rewatching The Sopranos week by week. I'm going to be starting my second official Game of Thrones rewatch. For something else that is coming down the line. I'm making my way through Seinfeld. There are a couple other shows that I'm considering doing rewatches
Where are you at in Seinfeld right now?
I'm still really early on. The problem with Seinfeld is that I've watched probably a couple episodes from each season randomly at points on TV, but I've never watched the entire show in its entirety. And I have all 9 seasons on DVD, so I'm making it my mission. I don't care how long it takes. I don't want to rush it. That's the thing, because you know me with comedy, specifically with sitcoms and how repetitive they can get for me, and I don't want that to happen with Seinfeld. So that's why I gotta take my time with it. But yeah, I'm enjoying the TV rewatch thing, and I have a feeling that that's only going to continue with me as time goes on. And I just initially, because it just happens as you get older, you become more jaded, you become more embittered. I'm waiting for the inevitability of just everything to start disappointing me, and it makes me worried, because as far as certain rewatches of future shows go, I definitely tell you, I will definitely rewatch Clone Wars. Rebels, it's still 50-50 because I still haven't finished that, and I got to finish that and see how it like kind of digests and lasts for me over time before I ever consider rewatching it. This show, though, again, it's still so new and so fresh, so it's hard to tell you in the moment.
Yeah, totally.
But again, there's a moment.
I would have done it if I didn't feel I needed to prepare a little more.
But
so
the point being is that there's a reason why season 1 was only my number 10 last year. And this season, again, will easily be in the top 10 list, but only for severe lack of content overall. And I'm not going to lie. I do not think this show bodes well for the future. I do not think this show bodes well for just future rewatches in general, because I have a bad feeling this could end up getting canceled after season 4, and we get just no resolutions. It's just like, oh, cool. So mission of the week interspersed with some cool stuff. And that's what the show is going to be, when it could have been so much better.
And that's my biggest fear. But you know what's even worse? Just on the little tidbit of rewatching things. Yeah. When you mature and you don't realize that a show that you cherished, aka How I Met Your Mother, goes down a bunch of pegs when you rewatch it. And that's tough. But it's life.
I both do not want to rewatch that show, but at the same time, I do, just to see how different. Because I remember when I was watching, I could not stop. And though that episode made me laugh hard. And I have a feeling that if I rewatch it, there'd be some moments that I would still be dying laughing at, and other moments I'd be like, oh, God. The one thing I think that will still stand, though, is that Ted Mosby to me is still one of the worst leading men in TV history. But that's just me and just my relationship with those types of characters. Yeah. But
it was painful. It was painful to rewatch it as an older not like, I guess
older than you were when you watched
just
it.
Like an older guy.
The show ended in 2014. That's 6 years ago. So it's been some time.
But hopefully, let's see how this ages. We'll come back. I might come back and watch this in a year and see if I still feel the same way, especially after this Mandalorian season that we're currently covering week to week recap. So
definitely going to be interesting to say the least. So real quick, just to kind of recap everything that we just did with this recap. So on the D tier, chapter 5, the Gunslinger. On the C tier, we have chapter 4, Sanctuary, and chapter 6, The Prisoner. On the B tier, we have chapter 1, The Mandalorian, and chapter 2, The Child. On the A tier, we have chapter 3, The Sin, and on the S tier, we have chapter 7, The Reckoning, and chapter 8, Redemption. And that was it. Just as far as I don't think we need to go into personal rankings, because that wasn't the point of this, but this was fun, Chris. Can we do this again at some point with other things?
Yeah, man. I was kind of, nervous on if you would like it or not. I had a
liked
fun
it.
time doing
You
it
know I
with
like
AJ,
ranking
and
stuff.
I'm glad you liked it. It's a different kind of ranking. I feel like it's
It
a
is.
low pressure ranking.
Yeah, it's it's funny though, because I'm really really happy that you brought this up, because this is actually just something that, like, since this is like kind of more of a loose and free form episode, this is kind of like something that I wanted to incorporate potentially into future top 10 lists. But again, that's a thing for another day and a thing for the production meetings. But as far as that goes, to the people who tuned in, thank you for tuning in. This was fun. This is more of a kind of a lower tier, more relaxing type thing than we've done before. But yeah, we had a lot of fun doing it. At least I did. I don't know if Chris did. I mean, he was the one who put it together, but I had a lot of fun.
It went exactly as I would have hoped. It was fun. We were honest, and we don't pull punches when we talk about the things we like, even if it hurts us. So I appreciate it.
We have to be. That's our job. That's our role right now. I'm considering this a job, even at this point. Like, this is literally what I do when I'm not at my main job, and it's pretty much all I do. So
they say you got to dress for the job you like. So I'm kind of adopting that mentality when approaching this channel, because I love it so much, and I want to do something I love with my life.
Exactly. So. It's kind of the point of living, and I hope that this Jurassic Park T-shirt makes me professional enough for this. So, people, thanks for tuning into this Mandalorian season 1 episode tier ranking is what I'm going to call this. We'll have to figure out what we're going to do with this next. I have a feeling it's going to be a while before we actually do something like this again, but we're going to have to figure out what it is. Maybe we'll put up a poll that we keep saying that we're going to put up on Instagram that we still haven't, but we might do that. So, people, with that being said, thank you for tuning in to another episode, just, of side content of Talkin TV. This was fun. Be sure to tune in 2 days to our next recap for episode 3 of this season, chapter 11, if you will, of this season of The Mandalorian. Be sure to go back and rewatch, or re-listen to, rather, our first 2 episodes of The Mandalorian, recapping the premiere and finale of season 1 from last year. The finale was our season finale for season 1. We're actually coming up. We're close. We've officially surpassed a year of doing this for just the podcast in general since we started this. And we're getting close to the end of season 2, dude. 12 seasons and a short film, I think is what we said. Something like that.
Yeah. 12 seasons and a short film. That's the story of Talkin TV. That's for sure.
Guys,
this is our Instagram, where you can find all sorts of information, like what we post about how we're covering the Star Wars recap show week to week. Again, that's Fridays at 8 p.m. and that's Talkin TV podcast, as you can see up there on Instagram. We'd appreciate you guys come and join our community over there. It's constantly growing. Last I checked, we were at 420. Now it's 429.
Yeah, it's 429. I was just looking, and every time I check, we're getting more people, and I'm like, oh shit! So we're actually like managing to spread the word a little bit. We're getting our name out there. It's a good feeling overall. Actually, one of the guys who was on our first episode this season, Adam, actually reached out and congratulated us for reaching 100 subs, and I'm like, oh, thanks, man. It makes me feel all warm and good inside. Actually makes me feel like what we're doing actually matters. And definitely very, very reassuring in these extra dark times. So, people, thanks again for tuning in to another episode. You guys know what to do. Like I said before, click the subscribe button and that like button, and leave a comment. Also, let us know what are some other interesting tier rankings that you could see. I actually could see something coming up very soon for a certain gigantic animated franchise, just in general. And also make sure that when you do click that subscribe button, because we have mind powers and we can hunt you down if you don't. And if you don't think we can, remember, everyone has the internet on their side. Everyone can find anyone. Make sure to click that bell next to that subscribe button. That way you get notified every time we put up a new piece of content. See, look at that. Look at all this content that we put up there for you people.
Mandalorian, Shocktober, popular uploads. Thank you guys for giving us popular uploads. Speaking
of which, wait a minute, because literally, no joke, every time I look at that community top 10 list, it like bounces up like another 20 views. What is that? Like 965, 955, something like that?
Back on the stream, they think we're stealing our own video. But yeah, 955. That's wild, isn't it?
That's insane. I'm still, I don't know why. I mean, I shouldn't be, because again, like, it was just perfect zeitgeist moment, but like, it amazes me every time I see how many views that video is getting, because it's not even like the most amount of work that I've put into one of these top 10 lists. So,
well, you did a great job.
Follow us on the Facebook, follow us on the Instagrams at Talkin TV podcast. Chris, if you don't have anything else you want to leave the people with, guys, we'll see you on Friday for our recap of episode 3. And as always, watch more fucking movies. And